Hello, my name is Kaisha Ryan.
Good morning, my name is Mahdi Ismail.
Good morning, I'm Yashwendra Kumar.
And today we're going to discuss on racism. Racism is, by definition, division between two cultures or two religions or two races among people.
Of course, we know discrimination is very bad. We do not want to feel it. We studied and we did a short survey about the way of discrimination, bad side effects of racism in the community, what it remains in our memory, and how we can stop it.
Three of us have also studied about the prevention towards racism. And
So today we got a chance to speak to three lecturers in our college in Southwick, and they gave us quite in-depth insights on what they think on racism.
Right now, we are going to knock the door and ask our lecturer what is the definition of racism, point of view. Each one of us see the racism in different perspective. We would like to see through the perspective
Of different people.
My name is Gregory Bond. I'm an assistant professor in psychology here at UCSI University. Well, racism is basically a form of discrimination, which means to treat a certain group differently. It's based on prejudice, which means to judge somebody beforehand. So usually prejudice is a judgment that we make about somebody, about their nature or their personality, normally on superficial types of traits, like maybe their skin color, or their sexual orientation, or their religion, or any of those sorts of things. So basically, if you're talking about prejudice against a certain group, a certain racial group, a certain ethnic group, or a group that has a certain skin color, and there's a behavior attached to it which is negative or derogatory, that's what we call racism. I mean, prejudice is a thought process, beliefs that you might have about a certain group, but if you actually act upon those thoughts, then that's what we would usually call racism.
Hi, I'm Jane T, and I'm the head of the ELC department and the Faculty of Social Sciences and Liberal Arts, and also the acting deputy dean for the faculty. When I think of the word racism, I think it's more of a kind of belief that people have of their own race, their characteristics, the specific values that they have in that race. At the same time, it can also mean that we tend to compare our race to another person's race. So it's your own belief of what your race is, and at the same time it extends to what you see in other people's race. And in some ways you may think that there are some advantages or disadvantages in terms of, do you find another race more superior or inferior than your own? So that's what I think racism is.
My name is Hidayah. I am the MPU coordinator and lecturer, and I've been here for 3.5 years. Looking at my point of view of racism, it's kind of a feeling or impression of a person that maybe can claim themselves as a superior towards another person, okay, that they can claim as the inferior one. For example, I'll give you example. As a lecturer, I can have like a cynical or skeptical feeling or impression towards others just because I am a lecturer and I have like maybe a stable kind of life in Malaysia and
So it can take any number of different forms. When you see racism in housing, like some people might be, because of their skin color or their ethnic background, they might be denied the ability to rent certain apartments or to live in certain areas. In the very worst case scenarios, it can result in genocide, like we saw in Germany during World War II.
In Iraq, in different Middle Eastern
Iraq.
countries.
I don't necessarily think it's good to forget entirely. I mean, if you're talking about this sort of residual hatred or residual animosity that might exist. Say if your grandfather was treated badly or your parents were treated badly, how many generations would it take for you to forgive the other?
But if you come from a community, there's always a lot of disagreements and arguments because of racial issues, then you will have this kind of prejudice against another race and always think mine is better and find maybe reasons why another race is not as good as yours. So it depends on individuals. At the same time, it's very important that the country in itself has good governance, politics, racially integrated. So there's one thing to have racial or race of values, and one more is integration. Now, integration is the most difficult part. You can have unity, you can unite people individually as individual races, but it's very difficult to integrate. So the problem that most countries face is you can have racial unity, but it's very difficult to get racial integration.
And basically it involves races, call it Indians or maybe Chinese, because of the specialties or privileges, okay? And in the other way, the other races, for example, the Indians or maybe the Chinese, they can have this kind of racism feeling or you can say feeling or maybe impression towards the Malay or the Muslim because of what?
If you remember Holocaust genocide, which is 1 million people get genocided in very short days. So if we still remember the pain, if we still remember the people we lost, or what happened, do you think is it a way that we can stop the racism?
Well, it's a way to help it from happening again. And if we forget about history, then it's more likely to repeat itself. For example, if we forget about, like you mentioned, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, if you forget about how horrible that was, how horrible the aftermath was, then you might think, well, it's okay to use an atomic weapon. So it's better that we can remember. The same with the Holocaust or genocides that we've seen in the Middle East or in Africa. If we can remember how terrible it was.
Do you think is it important if each individual of the community have this feeling of racism for his own country in a positive way to protect his flag, to protect his land, or?
Well, I think it's inevitable. In psychology, there is a lot of
You
research.
can say, if anything happens on the road, there's a fight, they say, must be this race. It must be this person doing it. It's always blaming it on the race and not a person. The person may be not a good person, but blame it on the person, not the whole community. So students tend to sit among their own groups or communities. Why? Because there's racial unity but not racial integration. Okay, like I said, it's something that everybody has to be involved in. You can't have one party or one organization that's taking its role. So if you see at a very small scale, we start with the family unit. All right, parents who are open-minded, who have friends who are multiracial, ethnic backgrounds, and they're letting the children play with friends from different groups of communities, and not just have, okay, I want to go only here, I don't want you to go there, I don't want you to mix with this person. So I say, don't look at the race, but look at the person. If the person is good, then you avoid, but not the race as such. From schools, then we come up to the community. Do we live in a community that's fully just of one race? Or do we want to live in a community that has many races, our neighbors? Alright, the community you live in, is it predominantly of just one race? Do you think?
Basically, I will look into the leaders' kind of role. Okay, because normally in each and every country, it's the leaders' role to stop or maybe to reduce this kind of thing. Okay, so as for me, the politician and then the leaders, they should be having like reducing by giving a lot more impression, a good impression to the community, to the people of Malaysia, and then maybe by education basis, they have to start giving this kind of education to the people of Malaysia. Because now
Dear student of Mistani, in the end, we saw 3 different ideas from 3 different doctors from the university. For sure, racism is not good, and we shouldn't be racism. let's have a better, healthy community.
Racism isn't good, so it doesn't bring a nation up. Without racism, we can do wonders. So if everyone goes against it and start having unity, we can achieve more things.
Racism should be prevented. The prevention step should start from the early stage, very early stage, from the schools, from the families. Media should play a big role in it. And as what Ms. Jayanti said, to prevent racism, it should start from ourselves.